A police officer walks up to your car window during a routine traffic stop and asks you one simple question. Do you have any weapons in the vehicle? What you say in the next 5 seconds could be the difference between driving away safely or spending the night in jail. Even if you are a completely legal gun owner with a valid permit, most people get this wrong. And when they do, it can cost them their freedom, their permit, and thousands of dollars in legal fees. Before we go any further, quick question. Are you subscribed? Because what I'm about to explain could save you from a decade in prison and financial devastation. Go ahead and hit that button right now. Seriously, take 2 seconds. Done? Good. Let's make sure you never learn this lesson the hard way. Here's what happened to a concealed carry permit holder in Texas last month. This is a perfect example of what not to do. A man named Marcus, completely legal gun owner, gets pulled over for a broken tail light. Nothing serious. The officer approaches and asks the standard question. Sir, do you have any weapons in the vehicle? Marcus thinks he's being cooperative, helpful, respectful. He says, Yes, officer, I have a Glock 19 in my glove box and my permit is right here. Sounds reasonable, right? Wrong. Marcus spent 6 hours in custody that night. Why? Because the way he answered gave the officer legal justification to search his entire vehicle. And during that search, they found an old magazine loaded with hollow point rounds in his trunk from a range trip months earlier. Those specific rounds were technically illegal in his county under a local ordinance he didn't even know existed. Now, Marcus has a criminal record. He lost his concealed carry permit, and all because he tried to be helpful. Let's break this down. When an officer asks if you have weapons, 2 things are happening at once. First, they're gathering information for safety. That part is legitimate. And second, and this is what most people miss, they're creating a potential legal pathway to search your vehicle without a warrant. Your answer matters more than you think. Here's the reality. You have rights during a traffic stop. But most gun owners accidentally waive those rights within the first 30 seconds because they think being friendly will make things smoother. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it ruins your life. The key is knowing how to protect yourself legally without escalating the situation. You can do both. You just have to know how. Before I give you the 5 words that protect you, you need to understand something critical about state law. There are duty to inform states, and states, without that, requirement. A duty to inform state means you are legally required to notify an officer that you're carrying a firearm, usually immediately when they approach your vehicle. States like Texas, Louisiana, and North Carolina fall into this category. If you're in one of those states, you must inform the officer. Failing to do so is a crime by itself, but here's where it gets tricky. Even in duty to inform states, how you notify them makes all the difference. You can satisfy the legal requirement while still protecting your constitutional rights. Most people don't realize that. They assume duty to inform means you must give the officer complete access and full cooperation beyond what the law requires. That's not true. Let me give you an example. Imagine you're in North Carolina, which has a duty to inform law. An officer pulls you over. Rower. Iowa. Here's what most people say. Officer, I have a gun on me and my permit is in my wallet. That sentence just opened the door for the officer to step you out of the vehicle, disarm you, and potentially search for additional weapons. You complied with the duty to inform requirement, but you gave away far more than necessary. Quick legal note. This is educational information, not legal advice. Every situation is different. Every state has different laws. Consult an attorney for your specific circumstances. Now, if this is already changing the way you think about traffic stops, imagine what you'll learn in my next breakdown about the 3 mistakes that can revoke your concealed carry permit even when you did nothing wrong. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. All right, here are the 5 words you need when an officer asks if you have weapons in your vehicle. Ready? Write them down. I decline to answer questions. That's it. 5 words. I decline to answer questions. Let me explain why this works. First, that sentence invokes your 5th Amendment right against self-incrimination. You have a constitutional right to remain silent, and that right applies during traffic stops, not just after arrest. Second, invoking your right to remain silent does not create probable cause to search your vehicle. Silence alone is not evidence of guilt. Third, you're not being rude. You're not escalating. You're not arguing. You're simply exercising a constitutional right calmly and respectfully. And how you say it matters. Keep your hands visible on the steering wheel. Stay calm. Make eye contact. Use a respectful tone. If the officer pushes back and says, "I'm asking for my safety," or if you have nothing to hide, why won't you answer? You repeat the same 5 words. I decline to answer questions. Don't explain. Don't elaborate. Don't justify. Just repeat it. Now, if you're in a duty to inform state, you modify this slightly. Here's what you say instead. Officer, I am notifying you that I am a concealed carry permit holder. I decline to answer further questions. You've satisfied the legal requirement without volunteering unnecessary details. You did the minimum required by law and protected your rights. And here's something important. Do not say, "I have a gun." That phrasing has caused dangerous misunderstandings during traffic stops. If you must notify, say, "I am a permit holder." It communicates legality without creating unnecessary alarm. Also, do not reach for anything unless instructed. Keep your hands visible. If asked for your license and registration, tell the officer where they are and ask permission before reaching. Well, my wallet is in my right front pocket. May I retrieve it? Wait for confirmation. Then move slowly. Safety and calm are critical. Here's something many people don't realize. In states without duty to inform laws, you have zero legal obligation to volunteer that you're carrying. States like California, Florida, and Georgia do not require voluntary disclosure. If the officer doesn't ask, you don't have to tell. If they do ask, you can decline using those 5 words. But here's the important part. Declining to answer does not mean the officer can't order you out of the vehicle. Under the U.S. Supreme Court case Pennsylvania v. MIMS, officers can order you to exit the vehicle during a lawful stop. If they tell you to step out, comply. Refusing is obstruction. If you step out and you are carrying, you can then say, "Officer, before we proceed, I want you to know I am a concealed carry permit holder and I am currently armed. How would you like to proceed?" That phrasing informs for safety and gives the officer control over next steps. Usually, they'll temporarily disarm you during the stop. That's legal. The key is calm compliance without volunteering unnecessary information. We're just getting started. Now let's talk about the states that fall somewhere in between. Some states don't require you to volunteer that you're carrying, but they do require you to answer truthfully if directly asked. Pennsylvania is an example of this type of state. Pennsylvania, you don't have to announce that you're armed the moment an officer approaches. But if the officer directly asks, "Do you have any weapons?" you must answer truthfully. Lying to a police officer is a crime. So what does that look like in real life? You're pulled over. The officer asks, "Do you have any weapons in the vehicle?" In this situation, you must answer honestly. So you say, "Yes, I am a concealed carry permit holder and I am armed." Simple, direct, truthful. Then the officer follows up. "Where is the weapon? Here's where you protect yourself." You respond, "Officer, I've answered your question as required by law. I decline to answer further questions." See the difference? You satisfied the legal requirement. You didn't lie, but you didn't volunteer additional information that could expand the scope of the stop. This is where most people make their mistake. They believe cooperation means surrendering their rights. They think if they assert their rights, the officer will automatically treat them like a criminal. Sometimes that tension exists, but your rights exist for a reason. And once you give them away voluntarily, you cannot reclaim them later when you're facing charges. There's a powerful legal concept called consent. If you consent to a search, an officer doesn't need probable cause. They don't need a warrant. Your consent alone is enough. And here's the part that catches people off guard. Consent can be implied. If you say, "I have a Glock in the center console," you've just created a logical basis for the officer to verify that statement by looking inside the center console. Once they're inside, anything else they find becomes fair game. That forgotten magazine, that technical local ordinance violation, that small item you didn't even remember was there. It all becomes evidence. That's why the 5-word response is so powerful. I decline to answer questions. You're not consenting. You're not expanding the stop. You're not creating probable cause. You're not accidentally incriminating yourself. You're staying calm and protected. Now let's address something honestly. Some of you are thinking, well, won't this make the officer angry? Possibly. But awkward tension for a few minutes is far better than months or years of legal consequences. Your legal safety is more important than appearing extra cooperative. Let me give you another example. A concealed carry holder in Florida named Jessica gets pulled over for speeding. The officer asks the weapon question. Jessica, trying to be polite, says, "Yes, officer, I have a Ruger LCP in my purse on the passenger seat. My permit is in there too." The officer asks to see the permit. Jessica says, "Yes." The officer reaches into her purse to retrieve it and discovers a small pocket knife clipped inside. The blade was slightly over 3 inches. Under a local ordinance in that county, that blade length technically exceeded the limit. Jessica was charged with carrying a concealed weapon without a proper license because of the knife, not the gun. She spent $8,000 on an attorney fighting that charge. It was eventually dismissed. But that was 6 months of stress, court dates, legal bills, and uncertainty, all because she volunteered information and gave implied consent to access her purse. If she had simply said, "I decline to answer questions," the officer would not have had legal justification to search inside her purse without independent probable cause. This is how quickly things can escalate. And here's something important. If an officer asks to search your vehicle, you should clearly state, "Officer, I do not consent to searches." Say it calmly, respectfully, clearly. If they search anyway, do not resist. Let them conduct the search. But your verbal non-consent preserves your legal rights later in court if the search is challenged. Now let's walk through the complete step-by-step game plan from start to finish. This is what you do every single time you see lights in your rear view mirror. Step 1. So, pull over safely and promptly. Turn off the engine. Roll down your window. Turn on your interior light if it's dark. Place both hands on the steering wheel where the officer can see them. Do not reach for anything. Just sit there, calmly. Step 2. When the officer approaches, greet them politely. "A good evening, officer." That's it. Wait for instructions. They'll typically ask for your license and registration. Tell them where those items are located and ask permission before reaching. My license is in my wallet, in my back pocket. My registration is in the glove box. May I retrieve them? Wait for confirmation. Then move slowly. Step 3. If the officer asks about weapons, respond based on your state law. Duty to inform state, "Officer, I am notifying you that I am a concealed carry permit holder." I decline to answer further questions. Non-duty to inform state, "I decline to answer questions." Step 4. If the officer presses you, repeat the same statement. Do not explain. Do not justify. Do not apologize. Just repeat it calmly. Step 5. If ordered out of the vehicle, comply immediately. Under Pennsylvania v. Mims, officers have the authority to order you out during a lawful stop. Step out slowly with your hands visible. If you are armed, once outside say, "Officer, for your safety, I want you to know I am a concealed carry permit holder and am currently armed." How would you like to proceed? Follow their instructions exactly. Step 6. If asked for consent to search, say clearly, "I do not consent to searches." Step 7. Accept the ticket or warning. Do not argue on the roadside. If you believe your rights were violated, handle it later with an attorney, not on the shoulder of the highway. The roadside is not the place to win legal debates. Now, what if an officer threatens to arrest you for refusing to answer questions? Invoking your Fifth Amendment rights is not a crime. Declining to answer cannot legally be the sole basis for arrest. If an officer arrests you purely for asserting your right to remain silent, that may constitute false arrest. But, in the moment, do not resist. Go peacefully. Say nothing further. Request an attorney immediately. Let your lawyer handle it. You comply with lawful orders, and you preserve your rights. We're going deeper into the bigger picture next. Now let's address something that makes a lot of gun owners uncomfortable. What if the officer is friendly? What if they say something like, "Oh, you carry." "What do you have?" "I carry a Glock 43 myself." It feels casual, harmless, almost like small talk. But remember, you're still in a legal encounter. Anything you say during a traffic stop can be documented, recorded, and potentially used later. Even casual conversation. You don't have to be rude. You don't have to shut down the interaction aggressively. But you also don't need to volunteer details. A simple response works. Yes, I'm a permit holder. I prefer not to discuss details during a stop. I hope you understand. That's respectful, calm, and protective. Most officers will respect it. And if they don't, your legal safety still comes first. Now let's zoom out and look at the bigger picture. Every traffic stop is a legal encounter. You've heard the phrase, anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. That doesn't only apply after arrest. It applies during traffic stops too. Officers are trained to gather information. They are trained to ask questions that expand legal authority. They are doing their job. You must do yours, which is protecting yourself legally. The 5 words, I decline to answer questions, that's your shield. Simple, clear, lawful, powerful. You are not being difficult. You are not being anti-police. You are exercising a constitutional right. And invoking your right to remain silent during a stop is supported by Supreme Court precedent, including Salinas v. Texas, which clarified how silence must be clearly invoked to receive protection. That's why the wording matters. Silence by itself can sometimes be ambiguous. But clearly stating, I decline to answer questions, removes that ambiguity. It makes your intent clear. Now let's talk about the fear factor. Some gun owners worry that asserting rights automatically escalates the encounter. But escalation usually comes from tone and behavior, not from calmly asserting constitutional protections. If your hands are visible, if your voice is calm, if your movements are slow, if your words are respectful, you are not escalating, you are controlling your exposure. There's a difference, and here's something critical to understand. Consent is often given accidentally. Not because someone says, yes, search my car, but because they overshare, because they explain too much, because they try to talk their way into appearing cooperative. The law does not require you to help build a case against yourself. It requires you to comply with lawful orders. That's it. Complying and volunteering are 2 very different things. You must comply with providing identification when required, following lawful orders, exiting the vehicle if instructed. You do not have to answer investigative questions, provide details beyond legal requirements, consent to searches. Now let's revisit duty to inform states for a moment. If you are in one of those states and you fail to notify, that itself can be a crime, usually a misdemeanor, sometimes grounds for permit suspension. So you do the minimum required. Officer, I am notifying you that I am a concealed carry permit holder. I decline to answer further questions. That sentence balances compliance and protection. You're not hiding anything. You're not lying. You're simply refusing to expand the scope of the encounter. And here's something many permit holders overlook. Local ordinances can vary. County laws can differ. Magazine restrictions, ammunition restrictions, blade length rules, storage rules. You might think you're fully compliant and still accidentally violate a local technicality. That's exactly how minor traffic stops turn into major legal problems. The roadside is not the place to debate legal nuance. The roadside is not the place to argue case law. The roadside is not the place to prove you're right. It's the place to remain calm, comply with lawful commands, and limit unnecessary exposure. Now imagine 2 drivers. Driver A answers every question, volunteers details, explains everything, agrees to searches to clear things up. Driver B provides required identification, notifies if legally required, declines investigative questions, refuses consent to search, complies with lawful orders if something unexpected is discovered. Which driver is in a stronger legal position later? Driver B, because rights preserved today become defenses tomorrow. Rights surrendered today cannot be reclaimed later. This isn't about being anti-law enforcement. It's about understanding the structure of the legal system. Police gather information. Prosecutors evaluate charges. Courts evaluate legality. Your job during a stop is not to convince. It's not to argue. It's not to educate the officer on constitutional law. Your job is to avoid making your situation worse. The 5 words accomplish that. I decline to answer questions. Calm. Neutral. Legally protective. We're about to bring this all together and walk through the full closing framework you should memorize. All right, let's wrap this up with the complete framework you should follow every single time you encounter a traffic stop. This is your step-by-step game plan to protect your rights. Stay calm and minimize risk. Step 1. Pull over safely. Pull over quickly but safely. Turn off your engine. Roll down your window. Turn on interior lights if it's dark. Place both hands on the steering wheel where the officer can see them. Do not reach for anything until instructed. Step 2. Greet politely. Good evening, officer. Wait for the officer to speak. Step 3. Provide identification and registration safely. Tell the officer where these items are. Ask permission before reaching. Example. All my license is in my wallet in my back pocket. My registration is in the glove box. May I retrieve them? Wait for confirmation. Move slowly. Step 4. Respond to weapons question based on your state law. Duty to inform state. Officer, I am notifying you that I am a concealed carry permit holder. I decline to answer further questions. Non-duty to inform state. I decline to answer questions. Say it calmly and respectfully. Do not elaborate. Step 5. Handle officer pushback. Repeat the same 5 words. I decline to answer questions. Do not justify, explain, or apologize. Step 6. If ordered out of the vehicle, comply. Step out slowly with hands visible. Once out, if carrying a firearm, say, Officer, for your safety, I want you to know I am a concealed carry permit holder, and I am currently armed. How would you like to proceed? Follow their instructions exactly. Step 7. Refuse consent to search. Clearly say, Officer, I do not consent to searches. If they search anyway, do not resist physically. Your verbal refusal preserves your legal rights for later. Step 8. Accept the ticket or warning. Say thank you. Leave the scene. Do not argue or debate on the roadside. If your rights were violated, handle it later in court with an attorney. Step 9. Remember the legal principle of consent. Consent can be implied by your words or actions. Volunteering information about firearms, magazines, knives, or locations can give officers legal justification to search. Keeping your answers short and legally compliant prevents accidental consent. Step 10. Always prioritize safety and legality. Calm tone. Hands visible. Follow lawful commands. Assert your rights respectfully. Avoid volunteering extra information. Key takeaways. The 5-word sentence, I decline to answer questions, is simple, respectful, and legally protective. In duty to inform states, add 1 sentence to satisfy legal requirements. Officer, I am notifying you that I am a concealed carry permit holder. Compliance does not mean surrendering your rights. Protect your rights first, safety second. Legal preservation always. Finally, remember, every traffic stop is a potential legal encounter. Your words, your tone, and your actions matter. Practicing these steps until they're automatic will keep you out of legal trouble, prevent unnecessary searches, and protect your concealed carry permit. Your freedom and rights are precious. Use them wisely. Stay safe, stay legal, stay smart. And subscribe to stay informed about new updates, cases, and strategies that could affect gun owners and concealed carry permit holders.